The only thing that matters is decentralization. Centralization is far more efficient, it's far more powerful. You outsource your security to a cartel. Anything that is a centralizing force eventually takes over. Every other blockchain out there uses this system. That's not going to work for me.
Paddy Cerri, he's the co-founder and chief architect of Minima.
I wanted everybody to be an equal on the network. I wanted everybody to be running the network. The only device that I can reasonably expect everyone to have is a mobile phone. So Minima had to run on that device. Minima makes it so that none of those centralizing forces can affect the chain. It is truly decentralized in a way that no other blockchain is. If I had to rewrite Minima now, knowing what I know.
Hi, and welcome to this really special episode of We Are DePIN. We are here with Paddy, the CTO and co-founder of Minima.
Hi, thanks very much for having me.
So, let's kick things off. Why don't you give us an introduction to Minima for those who somehow might not already be familiar?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Minima started about 10 years ago. I fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, as did many coders, in about 2012, and was fascinated and blown away by this technology. I absolutely adored what it was doing. I guess our first tiff, our first lovers' tiff, occurred during the SegWit Wars. And it occurred to me when there was this argument between the miners and the users as to whether some network protocol upgrade, blah, 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 was going to happen, that the network was divided between those users who run the network and those users who use the network. And I realized that I was no longer one of the people that ran the network. Originally, I used to run the software. I used to have -gen on the command line. I used to mine. And then there came a moment where, wow, I'm no longer a big part of that. I use the network, but I didn't run the network. And this was a problem for me. This made me reevaluate some of the assumptions that I'd made. And what I realized was that centralization is very pernicious. What it made me realize was that you have to be very, very careful with regards to your blockchain, because anything that is a centralizing force eventually takes over. It's a very, very powerful concept. Centralization is far more efficient. It's far more powerful. It's far more, it's faster. And so to remain decentralized, which is the only thing that a blockchain does, is more important than anything else. It became apparent to me that the only metric that mattered was the decentralization of the network. And so I started working on a project which I believed would never suffer from the problems and the issues that I was seeing arise around me. Now, when attacking this problem, a few things became apparent. I wanted everybody to be an equal on the network. I wanted everybody to be running the network, not just runners and users. I wanted everybody to be running the network. And so it became obvious that the only thing that you could, expect people to have access to was a mobile phone. You can't expect people to have computers or servers or Kubernetes clusters online. The only device that I can reasonably expect everyone to have is a mobile phone. So Minima had to run on that device. Once you give yourself some limitations, necessity is the mother of invention. And so you start to go, okay, well, if I want this to happen, how can I do this? These massive databases, this huge amounts of power, what can I do? And actually, if you make some tough design decisions at the beginning, it is possible for you to squeeze this technology into a smaller and smaller space. So one of the innovations that Minima uses is that instead of having a large database that everybody uses, every user simply keeps a small database of their own information. Yeah. So instead of me having all of Charlie's coins and Charlie having all of mine, and when I send a transaction, Charlie can tell, oh yeah, Paddy sent this, and he looks in his big book and he says, yeah, he's got those coins. What if I flip that and I said, look, when I send a transaction, I'll add the proof of the existence of those coins. And that means you don't need to keep a copy of my coins because I can prove to you that I own them. This uses an MMR tree. It uses a sort of hash tree. And that means that the amount of data that I have to store doesn't grow as the network grows. I only look after my coins and Charlie looks after his. This was the first innovation. So it's like, oh, okay, cool. So we managed to fit all of the data of the entire network so that each user looks after their own, information. I guess the main difference, the thing that really distinguishes Minima from every single other blockchain out there, is this idea of the mining, is this idea that there's people being paid in a competition to find the blocks. This is a problem. And it's a problem because humans are incredibly good at competitions. Humans are top predator. And when you have a competition, the end result is in the title. There's always a winner. And when someone wins the game of mining, your chain is dead. It's over. Because as soon as one person is in charge of which transactions do or don't get into the blockchain, that is where the attack takes place. That is where the governments of this world, where the hackers of this world will attempt to break your chain. So you need to make it that never happens. You need to make it so that there is never a situation where there are less and less people looking after the running of your chain. And so Minima doesn't run a competitive game. Minima runs a cooperative game, which means that when we're mining, instead of competing with each other to see which one of us can get a block and then get paid, we actually cooperate with each other. What is good for me is good for you. What is good for you is good for me. The first chain that did this was actually IOTA, where they had the users mining their transactions. And this was a really good idea. The way they implemented it in the DAG on IOTA didn't work because the DAG doesn't converge, blah, blah, blah. But we use that concept. And what it means is that there is no incentive to mine Minima other than the incentive of using the network. So the users will only let you join the network if you do a little bit of work. And then we sum all of that work up together, and that is what gives the network its security. And what this means is that we have a blockchain that not only fits on your phone, but doesn't incentivize users to become bigger than they need to be. Every other blockchain out there uses this system, whether you're a proof of work chain or whether you're a proof of stake chain. What happens is that you pay people to look after you. What happens is that you outsource your security to a cartel of users and you say, look, I'm going to use the network, but I want you to run it. That's not going to work for me. Being able to run the chain myself in full was the most important thing. Being able to know that there was no incentives, the game theory of the chain dictates that there are no incentives for you to acquire massive hash rates, massive amounts of stake so that you can make more money, is really important, because that is the way you attack the network. That is the way all of these blockchains are going. There's less and less people who are in charge of running it. The gift that Satoshi gave us, the thing that he did, was that he allowed us to come up with this. He gave us a system which allowed us to come to consensus in a decentralized way. Before blockchain, we were simply not able to come to consensus in a decentralized way. You always had to rely on somebody at the middle to disseminate the information, to count the votes, to tell you what exactly was happening. And that person had to be trusted. You had to have a trusted environment to reach any sort of consensus. And then Satoshi comes along and he says, no, we can use a blockchain for that. And the word that matters, the only thing that matters, is decentralization. And anything that impacts decentralization is no good. anything that affects the decentralized nature of your blockchain breaks it. You have to remain decentralized because that is the only way of achieving the censorship resistance that blockchains purport to provide. Minima is the most decentralized blockchain in the world. Minima not only starts decentralized, but continues to be decentralized. Every other blockchain out there has cracks of centralization. And centralization is incredibly pernicious. And what happens is that it takes over the chain. We see this in the mining, where big miners get bigger and bigger and small miners are kicked out. We see this in the development of the protocol, where a few people get to decide what gets into the chain or not, into the protocol of the chain. They change the fundamental structure. Minima fixes those issues. Minima makes it so that none of those centralizing forces can or will affect the chain. One way of looking at it is that the larger any blockchain gets, the more centralized it becomes. We see this objectively. When they get bigger, they get more centralized. There are bigger players that do more important things. There are bigger miners. There are developers on Ethereum that get to decide this. The larger Minima gets, the more decentralized it gets. And that's really important because, as I've said, the only metric that matters is decentralization, and Minima's singular task is to be a blockchain that remains decentralized forever. And I think Minima does that. One of the things that seems to be happening in the world is that companies and corporations are interested in the blockchain technology, and rightly so. It's incredibly powerful. But how are you going to merge these two industries? How are you going to merge these two industries? How is it going to be possible to integrate blockchain technology into, the devices of the future? You're going to have to be a very small, lightweight, compact chain. You're going to have to be a protocol that doesn't require upgrading. You're going to have to be an embeddable blockchain. You're going to have to be a blockchain that can be put on a hardware chip without them ever having to feel that they'll need to upgrade that chip, that the new chips that come out in the future will be compatible with the old chips. And Minima ticks all those boxes. We are a compact chain that runs on a very efficient, lightweight protocol that is finished, quantum secure, allows for massive, massive scale using the Omnia protocol. And this is all they need. It doesn't have to continually change in the future. There are certain requirements that you need from your blockchain. And this is what the companies want to embed in their devices. And Minima ticks all those boxes. So this is why we have such productive discussions, with the car manufacturers or the ARM chip staff or, the other companies that I'm not allowed to talk about. But I think Minima does what these companies need. And they know that no one can ever change that in the future by putting a full node on everybody's phone and, by creating a compact chain that can fit on every edge device on the planet, by coming up with a system that is so light and efficient that every chip in the world, hopefully, can embed this technology, means that you have a system that is unstoppable, means that you have a system that will never succumb to the pressures of centralization. And that is where, Minima really shines.
And thank you for that, Paddy. You actually mentioned earlier, but before we came, you actually said Minima, we are DePIN. That's what Minima is, which I loved, because obviously we're about to come on the We Are DePIN podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, run us through that when you literally said we are DePIN.
So I've met a lot of DePIN projects, and for me, to be considered a DePIN project means that you can't have a subset of people that are integral in the running of the network. If you want to be decentralized, then you're not allowed to have any centralized components. A system is only as decentralized as its most centralized bit. So whenever I speak to DePIN projects, it's like, yeah, we use, a decentralized network for processing this, and this goes over there. And I always ask them the same question. I said, but look, if you disappeared tomorrow, would your network still operate? And all of them fail that. That's the question you need to ask yourself. Is there any part of the network that is necessary for the whole to operate? And this is what you're not allowed to have in a DePIN system. This is the requirement for you to be considered truly DePIN, truly decentralized physical infrastructure network. Yeah. Minima does this. There are no central elements to Minima. There are no centralized miners. There is no, the Minima protocol itself is finished, which means that there is no upgrades on the protocol. There is nothing that can be added or removed, which is really important, because who does that adding and removing? Who is in charge of that section of it? What if they do something you don't like? What if you don't like the way that Ethereum switched from proof of work to proof of stake? Who gave the okay for that? That doesn't sound very decentralized to me. You need a system which is resilient to those forms of attack. You need a system that remains, the same, which can scale and grow and do all the things that you want it to do without there being the opportunity for someone to get involved and to change it in the future. So when I say Minima is DePIN, we are DePIN because we are decentralized to such an extent that not only do we not run any of the network, not only is there no part of the network that you could attack that would affect the rest of the network, not only do we not have any protocol upgrades in line in the future, we are a truly decentralized protocol that everyone can have access to, and the network now operates on its own. It's truly staggering, frankly.
And we've had a lot of interest and a lot of engagement and a lot of excitement around our Minima's big partnerships with companies like Arm and Siemens, just to name a few. And I think that really gets into the sort of embedded nature of Minima. But yeah, maybe talk us a bit through how that fundamentally decentralized, fundamental decentralization of Minima, then actually positions us pretty perfectly to actually be embedded on devices, on the 100 billion smart devices that are going to be by 2035.
Absolutely. So clearly, if you're going to install something on a piece of hardware, Minima is a compact chain, which means that we're very small. Even though we perform all the tasks that you expect from a blockchain, we're a very efficient small chain. One of the things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to make sure that the protocol doesn't change, because you're on a piece of hardware now. So you can't upgrade a piece of hardware the way that you can upgrade a piece of software. That's the difference between hardware and software. So not only is it the fact that Minima is so tiny that we do fit on a chip, I think one of the main reasons that Arm really liked us is because we are finished in terms of our protocol. Our protocol is now set in stone, which is exactly what you want when embedding yourself on a piece of hardware, because that means there isn't going to be some upgrade down the road, which is going to make the old devices incompatible with the new devices. So, speaking to Arm was hugely exciting, and I really look forward to working with them more to embed Minima on, the billions of devices that are being added to the global network on a daily basis, frankly. Because once you put, a blockchain on an edge device, and once the devices themselves become autonomous and independent, a lot of very interesting and exciting things can happen.
Well, let's dive into those interesting, exciting things. I mean, one of the big things we would talk about is decentralized AI, decentralized DePi, decentralized
DePi, right?
Physical artificial intelligence. Is that right? Yes.
Yeah. So I guess, whenever I think of artificial intelligence and blockchain, I think of giving a ChatGPT an account on Binance and saying, go for it. But I guess also, more importantly, when you're embedded on lots of edge devices, there's a lot of compute power there. There's a lot of, your phone is basically doing nothing most of the day. If there was some way for you to monetize that, if there was some way when you plugged it in at night, when it's charging, if your phone could actually do something, if there was a network of 1 billion devices that was capable of sending and receiving payments in a trustless, decentralized way, you could ask it to process, well, just about anything really. I suppose the closest um, to a decentralized compute problem that we can probably refer to is the SETI project that was occurring, 10 years ago, where people used to run a piece of software on their computer that looked up in the sky and tried to find, signals from space. This is like that. People had computers that weren't doing anything, and just off their own backs, they were like, look, I'll install this and I'll run it because I'm interested. Now imagine you could pay people for that. Now imagine your phone could be used on a large scale with 100 million, 1 billion other devices and be paid for doing that. Could you get some useful information out of that network? I think we all know that you could. Could you use that to process the massive amounts of data that are required for today's AI solutions? Absolutely. So when we talk about DePi, I guess what we're talking about is using the spare compute power that, the mobile phones and chips that we have Minima, hopefully running on, and combining all of that in a system where you can be paid to work on a singular problem. And, that could be very large.
And in terms of the kind of key issues that arise when you're talking about AI operating at the edge in devices on chip through partnership with Arm and partnership with large manufacturers like Siemens, but what are the big threats there? In terms of, for example,
Well, they
quantum
want it to be I think the thing that we're trying to solve here is that you want the system to be trustless. You don't want an entity to be in charge of that system, because, looking at the world today, it's pretty obvious that certain large, powerful organizations and governments do and don't want certain things to happen in certain places of the world. When you allow this technology to be used by anyone for anything, they trust that system in a way that they don't trust centralized systems. They use that system in a way that they may not feel they can use centralized systems. So the space, the design space of ideas is larger. The ability that you get incentivizes more interesting ideas because you trust the system. Yeah, trust is not something you want in the system. You want it to be trustless, but you want to trust the system to operate correctly. And that is what an edge network of blockchain empowered devices gives you. Yeah.
And just thinking about a few other of the key kind of differentiators here. Talk to me a bit about scalability and talk to me a bit about quantum resistance and security and that trade-off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So clearly, when coming up with a protocol that is finished, a protocol that doesn't require any upgrades, it had to be, quantum secure. It wasn't an issue 10 years ago, but when we try to do something, we do it. When we wanted to get a man on the moon, we did it in 10 years. We're going to get quantum computers in the next 20 years. Yeah. We're going to crack that problem. It seemed impossible. It seemed too radical for us to even be able to contemplate what would happen if we did it. But I think it's becoming pretty evident that that is going to be a thing. So Minima is, from the base, from the original design, quantum secure. These ideas are not new. The quantum security that is embedded in Minima was actually designed in the 1970s. We know what quantum computers can crack, and we know systems that are not susceptible to them. So we chose to add those systems at the beginning. So Minima is quantum secure, which means we don't have to upgrade the protocol. And it's interesting because at the moment, this is the problem that is occurring for those of us who are part of the crypto sphere, the Twitter sphere, the X, will know that this is becoming a bit of an issue for some of the players. Yeah, they're not currently quantum secure. Bitcoin is not quantum secure. None of them are. And so they're going to have to upgrade. They're going to have to change their protocol in fundamental ways. They're going to have to hard fork the network, which means that those that don't get kicked off the network. This is an incredibly hard problem to organize. It's really, really hard to get an entire network to upgrade the protocol in a decentralized way. Minima does not have these issues. Again, this is something that excites and entices Arm to work with us because they know that the protocol is ready for the future that is unfolding before us. So I'm glad that we made those decisions early on.
Brilliant. And we touched on this, I think, a little bit earlier because you were announcing the launch of Omnia and deep diving into that a little bit. But talk to us a bit about scalability and why that's a problem that other chains struggle with, and how Minima is different in terms of scalability.
So every chain tries to, every chain has its way of saying we can handle the world's traffic, and we all do it slightly differently. In my mind, the chains are doing it wrong. In my mind, the way that the chains are attacking this problem only leads to other issues. They are sacrificing their decentralization for scalability. And as I mentioned earlier, decentralization is the only metric that matters. So whatever your solution is, it cannot impact the decentralization of your network. Omnia does not impact the decentralization of the Minima network. Omnia scales to handle the traffic that the human world, the machine world, the ARM chip world can handle, can throw at it. And so this is the scaling solution that we have gone for. It is based on understood technology. It is fast. It is cheap to /free, and it scales to, frankly, whatever number of transactions we can throw at it. So Omnia is an incredibly exciting technology to be working on.
So, I mean, let's talk a bit more about the Minima ecosystem. We've got this fantastic technology. It's absolutely, perfectly suited to being embedded. This partnership with Arm. But what about the different kind of products that have been built? What about the different, aspects of the ecosystem?
So when I look at the crypto space, not everything is good, but some things have been a great success. I have issues with Ethereum, but I think everybody can agree that MetaMask has been a huge success. Yeah, the ability to write blockchain code on a website, the ability to allow web developers to sprinkle in a bit of JavaScript onto their web pages and for that to interface with a blockchain network has been a huge success. Ethereum has done this, but Bitcoin hasn't done this. It's not something that every chain has done, but that has been a huge success. Minima saw this, and although we took issue with the fact that MetaMask is completely centralized and that everybody that uses it just uses the servers that Infura run, okay, the actual system itself was really, really nice. So Minima has a system called the MinApps system, which is effectively our version of MetaMask. But instead of using centralized servers, the way Ethereum does, you actually use your server on your phone. But this way, applications can be written by web developers. A sprinkling of blockchain code can be added to the HTML pages, and then you can do stuff on a blockchain. You zip these applications up and send them to your friends, and then they can run them. So, there's no website, which is kind of interesting. When I say to someone, when someone says to me, have you used this great decentralized application? And I say, okay, give it to me. And they're like, no, you have to go to a website to use it. And I'm like, well, what if the website goes down? What if they decide to change the website? Doesn't sound very decentralized to me. So the MinApps system takes the ideas of MetaMask, keeps it completely decentralized, and then gives that ability to all our users. And that has been a very, very furtive and area of development, with lots of developers writing lots of different applications in a totally decentralized, unstoppable way, which is, what I really like.
I mean, well, let's talk about a bit more about devices. And what devices is Minima designed to be used on, and what devices are they being used on, and what devices will Minima be used on?
So, as I mentioned earlier, currently Minima runs mainly on phones because that's what everybody has. And that's really good because it means that we have to try really hard to keep its resources. The resources that Minima uses is very low. This allows us to run Minima on lots of other devices. So for instance, Minima runs nicely on the head units of cars. Minima could run on fridges. Minima runs on the lowest spec Pi. Minima runs on anything. Frankly, it's so light and and versatile. And this is really good because there's no barrier to entry for Minima into any of these ecosystems. So where do I see Minima? Minima should run on everything. Minima should be on your toaster. It should be on the video recorders. It should be in the air conditioning units. I'd like to put it on a watch. Yeah. There is no device that should not have access to a value transfer system. Every device in the future is going to want to pay or be paid for doing something. Because this makes it more efficient. This means that it won't have to do things that it doesn't need to, because it'll be able to pay other devices to do that for it. The machine-to-machine economy is really where I see Minima, really shining in the machine-to-machine economy, in low resource environments, super fast, super quick, and that is where Minima should be installed in the future.
And I think for a lot of people listening, it's difficult to understand the potential value of that connected, decentralized machine-to-machine economy with all that compute power being put to work on the edge. I mean, to give a strange example, I was looking at the kind of estimated GDP of space, right? And space hypothetically has an infinite amount of resources, right? But it's very hard to kind of put a number on that. It's like, well, can we get rockets up? What can we get down? It's a very speculative kind of valuation. I think for a long time, blockchain has been in a stage of speculative valuation. But if you were trying to understand the actual potential value in compute terms, in monetary terms, in efficiency terms of that kind of decentralized network, I'm not asking you to put a number, but maybe provide some context in terms of how that looks, how a billion smart connected devices looks compared to what we have now.
So I suppose we could think of it like we all use WhatsApp. We all use a version of WhatsApp that allows us to communicate with each other. This has proved incredibly useful. We are now able to communicate and send information to anyone in the world basically instantly. Businesses have become much more productive because of this, because now I don't need to send them a letter, or I don't need to do an inefficient phone call when I can send them a file, or I can send them an image over this network for information transfer. Now imagine that on the machine economy. Clearly this is also very useful. They will be using it. Now imagine that for a monetary network. So machines can start paying each other. Machines can start using other machines, so that you don't need to put all of the tech in each machine, because they will specialize. Specialist machines will do specialist jobs, and they will pay each other to do the thing that they are special at doing. This will have massive effect on productivity, on efficiency, on speed, in the same way that we have seen in the human world. So clearly this technology can be used for just about anything, but it has been so useful for us. I think it would be foolish to not realize how useful it will be in a machine space as well.
Brilliant. Minima recently launched a new product, Integrass. As the man with the vision behind the tech, why don't you tell us, why we should be excited?
Very simple tech, but very powerful. That's always nice. Elegant, simple, powerful. Just a timestamping system, which allows you to validate the integrity of data. It allows you to prove that certain data existed at a certain time in a nice interface that anybody can run and anybody can validate. What I really like about Integrass is that once you've got the data on chain, it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter whether the Integrass business disappears. That data has been validated, and now you can prove its existence at any point in the future. Also, the front-facing aspect to this, there's always the tech that ideas use, and that's important. But what you really want is you want to have a nice front end, and you want to have a nice system that is usable and accessible to the wider public. They don't, the truth is that I'm not sure they are as interested in the technology as I am, but they are interested in the effects of the technology and what power it gives them. Legal firms are in discussions with us because they want to timestamp documents and be able to retrieve this data. Cars are, Volvo's in discussions with us because you want to be able to prove what speed the car was going before an accident, so that, for insurance claims, et cetera, et cetera. So I find it fascinating because the technology itself was so simple, and yet the number of different use cases that we are seeing pop out are limitless. Everybody seems to want to be able to validate their data at a later stage. And actually, when you think about it in retrospect, that seems kind of obvious. But before we wrote it, it didn't seem that obvious, but now it does. So yeah, a great little product that I'm very, very happy with.
And that need to sort of validate and verify data. Why is it important that happens on a decentralized chain?
Because you don't want anyone to ever stop you from validating that data or adding data to the system. With regard to all of the abilities that blockchain gives you, the reason Minima stands, in my opinion, above the rest is that its truly decentralized nature means that once you start using Minima, you never need to worry that that ability is going to be taken from you. That is the ethos behind the MinApps system. That is the ethos behind Minima itself. There's no miners who can decide whether or not they like the idea of you posting a monkey JPEG on the chain. There's no developers who think they should change the protocol so it does or doesn't do something in the future. The entire system is now up, running, finished, working. You can use it to do what you want, and you never have to worry that in future that is going to change. That is an incredibly powerful idea, and that is what the Minima network gives its users.
Talk to us about MEV. Like, why doesn't Minima have any MEV, and why is that important?
MEV is
Define it for those.
so miner extracted value. What that means is that when you're on Ethereum and you try to buy something on a DEX, and you say, look, I want to buy this token. If I can put a transaction in before and after yours, can I extract value from that? If I know you're about to buy something, can I buy it first, then sell it to you, then sell it after you, then buy it back can I make a profit knowing that you are about to do something? And the answer is yes. And it's very interesting because what Ethereum did is they said, right, everyone's going to be doing MEV. So we're going to write better and better code that allows you to extract more and more value. And since everybody will be running it, this will sort of somehow flatten out. And actually all that happened was that more and more value was extracted. And now you find there's loads of bots just sitting on the network, just extracting value from all the transactions that get sent that use the DeFi products. Minima doesn't have this because Minima doesn't have, as with many of the problems that we face on the blockchain space, Minima looked at this and said, is there a solution to that? How can I stop someone sticking a transaction before and after my transaction so that they can extract some value from it? All the transactions in a Minima block occur simultaneously. There is no before and after in a Minima block. And you sort of think, again, this seems sort of obvious now, but in retrospect, at the time, this wasn't obvious at all. But yeah, Minima doesn't have any MEV because Minima doesn't have an ordering of transactions in a block. There are just a bunch of transactions and they all process at the same time. And if any of them fail, the whole block is invalid. But you can't insert a transaction before or after, so we don't have any MEV. And that's another nice, great feature to have on your blockchain. You don't have to worry about that.
And how do you add new clients to the Minima stack? That's the question I've always had.
So how to get people to use Minima? That's a great question. And, a question that I think a lot of blockchains, struggle with, fight with. You need to have a use case that gets people to use it. You need to have reasons for them to think, I need Minima to do this. And so we are currently in discussions, there's the bottom-up approach where you just get users to write cool applications that other users use. And there's the top-down approach where you get a business to integrate Minima, and then all of its users will have to use Minima for that reason. And somewhere in the middle they meet. We are in discussions with many car manufacturers because Minima runs on cars. It runs on the head unit nicely. And once you embed a blockchain on a car, there's loads of things that you can then do with that, such as, the car can pay for electricity units in a token, in a decentralized network of charging devices. And I think the word that springs to mind whenever I try to integrate Minima into a business is the resilience of the system. Yeah. Is this something that the business could do if they just used a big server with a MySQL database? Yeah. But when they use Minima to do it, there's no server that can go down that takes down the network. When they use Minima to do it, their system is resilient in a way that is simply not possible in a centralized environment. Now the system operates and cannot be stopped and cannot be broken, because that's exactly why you use a blockchain. It is a resilient system. And that gets them interested. That makes them think, okay, I don't have to worry about these servers going down and the whole network collapses. It operates independent of them. And that proves to be a great selling point.
Brilliant. And I think just tying things off as we get towards the end, like, tell us a bit about your vision for the future for Minima, what you see coming next, why people should be excited.
So I would like Minima to be transparent to the user. And what I mean by that is I would like Minima to be installed on every single device on the planet. And I would like everyone to be using it without knowing that they're using it. They don't need to know the background technology that is being used for them to do X, Y, and Z. When I think of my mother, she doesn't want to know about blockchains and transactions and quantum secure signatures, but she might want to send me some money. She may want to use an application that does something. And so because of Minima's ubiquitous nature, where you can install it on anything, what I would like to see is Minima installed on everything and everybody using it, but they don't even realize that they're using it. That would be a great success.
Brilliant. Well, I guess closing remark, if someone's a builder or a developer, why should they build on Minima?
I would build on Minima because it gives you a lot of power. It is truly decentralized in a way that no other blockchain is. If I had to rewrite Minima now, knowing what I know, if I had to come up with a blockchain, seeing everything that's happened, I'd rewrite Minima. There's nothing in it that I would change. And I know that's a bold statement, and you're like, nah, clearly there's things but no. If I had to use a blockchain, if I had to come up with a blockchain that I felt fixed the issues that I see around me, the scalability issues, the protocol upgrade issues, the mining centralization issues, Minima ticks all of those boxes. And I do like to play devil's advocate. I do like to, I really think hard about ways that, maybe Minima doesn't do this or doesn't do that, but I am still as impressed with Minima as I was when it blew me away when I first started writing it. And writing it has been the greatest, pleasure and honor of my life. And I look forward to working on it for many years to come.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
That has been Paddy, the CTO of Minima. Click like and follow us to keep up with We Are DePIN as we talk to more founders, more developers, and more people building very, very exciting things in this very exciting world of DePIN. Thank you very much.